So let's talk about MasterCard. How is MasterCard, one of the original American financial services companies, dealt with this very crazy modern pandemic that we've gone through? Tell me some of the stories.
So it's been funny. I think good things for us being in the US, I think, and being at MasterCard. First of all, we take BCP, business continuity plans very seriously. They've been very robust. So fortunately for us, because we do a test every year, there were certain parts of it that going remote was actually easier. But of course, as you can imagine, like our VPNs and remote working is meant for, snow days, storm days. It's not really meant to have, 19 to 95% of the staff working remotely. But I think because, we in the West were kind of late to the pandemic in that sense, because we'd seen some of our Asian offices kind of dealing with it, our IT teams were really, I think, getting prepared to see that, the people in the US and in the Western world and Europe would also start working remotely. So, they started doing some of that bandwidth maintenance and, how everybody would go remote. So I think from that perspective, it's been good.
What were some impacts of COVID on the business in terms of maybe new lines, new areas of growth, or things that you had to respond to?
So I think, like a lot of other companies, one of the first things we definitely had to respond to was just kind of being there for our customers, kind of helping them out, because, banks and financial services, but also the merchants were being hit. And I think a lot of the players in the industry probably don't appreciate that, while we work with banks a lot, we also work with merchants, and, all our SMBs and the small businesses, as we know, on the high street, they've been impacted. So we do have, certain programs like data and insights that we took out specifically targeted to them. We also have a lot of fraud tools with us. And as again, we've heard a lot, fraud has been at a skyrocket during pandemic because everybody is doing e-commerce, everybody's on their internet and phones and, connected. So we also have tried to see if there are any of our tools that we can provide to, let's say, the healthcare industry, because again, they have been so overstretched during this time. So again, trying to see those parts of community that we can help out within.
Where do contracts come into all of this?
Everywhere. As you can imagine, absolutely everywhere. And, one of the things I didn't mention, of course, one of the things, we do so much of work with on the marketing and the sponsorship side, but even more generally from a brand perspective, that, just going back and, we set up a task force to understand, to your point, coming to contracts. AI is becoming so important, understanding what's a force majeure positions in our contracts, how do we change that? How do we enact that? How do we implement and execute on it? But what are some of the things we need to do in light of the pandemic? So I think contracts kind of, people probably didn't appreciate how important contracts really are till something goes wrong or till a situation happens. And contracts really is for MasterCard, whenever you start talking to us, right from the NDA stages to the more mature contracts to, simple things like amendments, it kind of sits in that whole life cycle of the business.
What is a digital contract, and why is it so different than not only the DocX and email systems that we've been using to this point, but also, frankly, different than our competitors, which we see as more like taking a DocX and attaching some rules to it? It's very different than fundamentally rebuilding the contract from the ground up as we do with Workflow Designer, right? And so regardless from, you're in the business of transformation from a legal point of view. What do you see as the difference between an analog approach and a digital approach in this world that we live in today?
So I'll be very honest, John, as a lawyer, when I first started the transformation role and all this got thrown at me, I was completely at a loss. And I was one of those typical lawyers. I'm like, I know how this thing is done. I know how to give advice. Do not tell me to use technology, because that's going to actually, hamper what I'm doing. It's going to slow me down. And boy, was I wrong, right? And especially in the last year, to your point, I think one of the biggest things that technology and a digital contract provides to lawyers, which we probably do not see because we are so inundated and we're so as an in-house lawyer, you just don't have the leisure of time, very honestly. You're fighting against time all every time. Well, what happens with, I think, like a workflow designer or a digital contract, for me, the first thing is accessibility. It's how dynamic it is. It's about what I can actually do with it. It gives me things at my fingertips, otherwise, which I would have to find from like 10 different places to kind of put it all together. But now with the click of a button, hopefully I can see what those differences are. It's easier for me to go find. So, in any negotiation or any drafting, you have the worst case, the best case, and somewhere in between. With something that's going to be digital, with that click of a button, hopefully I have all those options with me rather than going and finding it from 10 different places, pinging somebody, waiting for somebody to respond to me. If you don't have a very good system to kind of do that search, it will save me time. It will help provide me with the latest and the newest, what a company's policies are, what they're looking for, what their risk appetites are.
One of the things that we've noticed, Ironclad legal by lawyers, we started out really being for in-house legal teams. And over the past couple of years in particular, these business teams, as they've been exposed to Ironclad, whether it's sales or procurement, marketing, IT, they're getting more and more curious, right? They're more and more like, wow, what is this thing? And I'm curious, like, which business teams got exposed to Ironclad during the pandemic, and what has been some of the feedback that you got?
Oh my God, I have such an awesome story to tell you right now, John. So we were actually going to launch Ironclad just for our NDAs. So we decided we wanted a contract lifecycle management system. We didn't really have one, etc. We decided we didn't want to roll it out for all our contracts because that's too overwhelming for both our lawyers and for our business. And adoption is the key for any new technology that you bring in. So that said, we said NDAs are probably the easiest. We already had a separate process for our NDAs. So we said, let's go live with them and let's see what's the adoption like, what's the reaction of people. And you won't believe it, we had it all planned out to do it in March. And literally when the pandemic hit, we were like, do we want to do this? Do we not want to do this? Should we delay it? And boy, are we again so glad that we didn't delay it. We said, no, let's just go. We're all ready. We've got the communications. We've done it all. And it was revolutionary. It was so amazing. And the reason for that is, as I said, number one, it gave accessibility. People were home. They didn't have to ping somebody. They didn't have to go tell their lawyer or somebody, hey, where's my NDA? It gave people transparency. They could read within the chat, who has it, who does not have it. You're not in your email, sending emails back and forth, overloading that. You can talk to the person within the tool itself. Going back and forth negotiations, you need to pull in other business people. You need to pull in somebody from finance or somebody from another team within the law department. You can do all within that environment and send them, chat-like messages almost. And then your e-signatures fully integrated. So there's no printing, there's no doing anything else. You also know whether somebody has opened it up for signatures or not. So you can chase them, goes right into your repository. So the amount of time it's cut down on the business for the steps they had to do that happens automatically, they loved it. My lawyers totally loved it because they're like, hey, now we're not spending time, if the business has downloaded the right template, are they using the latest version? We know exactly what to do, and boom, it goes to the business and the third party immediately. So some of our business, and it's not been one, but a few of our business people were so excited that they actually came to us and have said, hey, can we extend and expand this, not just to our NDAs, but to our other sales contracts? Like, the excitement level has been phenomenal. And they're like, we'll actually give you resources to do it. Now, when do you hear about business putting in resources and money for legal work? Like, that's really unheard of. So I think for us, that's been the true testament. And when we go live on the sales side, I think that gives us so much more confidence about the adoption rate and the ease of what Ironclad has to offer.
Anushree, as always, thank you so much.